Hello my friends, I am Dr. Saeed Kazmi. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In response to one of my previous videos, one of my students asked me two questions, and the first question was that why neonates are more prone to seizures when they have got any form of CNS insult as compared to older children. And the second question was that why why the same neonates, when they've got seizure, why is the frequency of subtle seizures or focal or multifocal seizures more common in neonates as compared to the generalized tonic-clonic convulsions, which we see more of in older children. So I thought I would take this opportunity to explain these two concepts to you people, so you can understand why seizures are more common in neonates when they've got any form of CNS insult, or why the subtle seizures or focal or multifocal seizures are more common when the same neonates when they've got seizures. Now for that you need to understand the pathophysiology of these brain chemistry. So what happens in a normal mature brain, that there is a balance between the excitatory and the inhibitory neurons. Now the excitatory neurons are those neurons which release excitatory neurotransmitters when they fire, and the excitatory neurotransmitters which are found in the brain, they are glutamate and acetylcholine. The inhibitory neurotransmitter is GABA, which stands for gamma aminobutyric or gamma aminobutyric acid. So in a mature brain there is a balance between the excitatory and the inhibitory neurons, so the chances of seizures are low per se, unless and until there is a form of a significant insult to the neurons. Now in neonates the pathophysiology is a bit different. The normal physiology in a neonate brain is that because the brain cells are immature, they are still developing, so we see a more of excitatory neuron as compared to inhibitory neurons. In other words, the neurons that release excitatory neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and glutamate, they are more in number as compared to the inhibitory neurons which secrete GABA. So obviously when you have got more of the excitatory neurons, and let's say when there is any form of CNS insult secondary to, let's say, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy or structural brain damage, so these neurons, the brain neurons, when they die, they would be releasing a lot of excitatory neurotransmitters, which is glutamate or acetylcholine. And what would these neurotransmitters do? These neurotransmitters would then excitate the normal neurons in the vicinity. So what would you see is that there would be an excessive predisposition to develop seizures even with milder forms of CNS insult. So this is number one. Number two, the question why there has been an increase in the excitatory neurons in a neonatal brain is, again, we know that the brain is immature. The neurons are still developing. The synapses and the connection between the neurons are still developing. Now normally there is a dictum in pediatric neurology. We say that neurons that fire together wire together. So it's important for the neurons to fire in harmony, so that because the repetitive firing of these neurons would lead to development of synapses and junctions between adjacent neurons, and that is how the neurons, they develop neuroplasticity. So that's why there is, nature has given more of the excitatory neurotransmitters in a neonatal brain, because these neurons, they have to fire, and when they are firing they would be developing connection with the adjacent neurons, and that is how the neuronal networks would develop and would mature and would lead to the general phenomena that we call as neuronal maturation and development of the brain, or maturation of the brain. So that's one of the reasons that when you've got more of the excitatory neurons, which are normally required for the developing brain, when they would be damaged, more of these excitatory neurotransmitter would cause excitation, and that would lead to development of seizures. The question number two was, why subtle seizures? Why not generalized tonic-clonic seizures? Now for generalized tonic-clonic seizures, the excitatory wave or the excitatory impulse, when it forms, it has to spread over the cortex. Now in a neonate brain, the neurons are still immature. there is incomplete myelination. So there will be patches where there is myelin and there will be patches where there is no myelin. So when there is no myelin in between, it is not possible for the electrical signal to jump through that distance. So what would happen is that there would be islands of neurons which would be firing in isolation, but that impulses would not be transmitted to adjacent parts. So that's why either you would see subtle seizures in the form of automations, smacking, cycling movements, or you might see focal seizures because one island of a neuron is firing, but because there is incomplete myelination, the impulse cannot jump across to the other neurons. Or you might see, if in the case of diffuse neural injury, you might have islands of damaged cells and which have released a lot of excitatory neuron. But since because in between the normal neurons have got incomplete myelination, so the signals cannot jump from one area to the other area to cause generalization. So you would see either focal seizures or multifocal seizures or subtle seizures. And that is one of the reasons that the frequency of generalized tonic-clonic convulsions in neonate is low as compared to subtle seizures or clonic seizures or multifocal seizures. So I hope I have tried to explain these two concepts in very simple language. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. I usually upload new videos on a weekly or a fortnightly basis. And if you've got any questions related to pediatrics, you can ask me in the comment section below. So have a good day. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.